Hello, hello, and welcome back to another live Friday morning, afternoon, evening, weekly news recap. I really like doing this one every week because it kind of keeps me up to task on everything that has happened through the week. Sometimes it's easy to forget, especially after nights like last night. What a game that was! I will probably be live later today to talk about to just hang and talk about the game and post match and just yap and things like that. But want to get into all of this as well. Hello, Parth, Alejandro, CB Data, Karis from Tunisia. Nice. Everybody over here on Big Up. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can always feel free to come join over there for these lives. They are a lot of fun. It's a nice platform. It's a nice place to hang out. And there are, as always, going to be a lot more things to come. uh, Fabrizio reposted his Cunha thing. When did he do that? I heard this morning to start the show off that there might be something happening there on Cunha um, today, or that there might have been some progress maybe made or something. So we'll see. Hopefully we get some sort of update. Oh, I see. He did this morning a couple hours ago. Okay, good. So yeah, maybe there is something that has in fact progressed there. Is one of the things that I heard this morning is that there might be some progress. I still don't think we will necessarily hear anything about Cunha until after our Europa campaign is over, which obviously now looks like it'll be May 21st to the final. So it looks like it anyway. So we might have to wait for confirmation then, but otherwise, yeah, there might in fact be some progress. Obviously, it's still being worked on, and as I've said before, I wouldn't really worry about small updates and things like that because we're just gonna most likely have to wait for the big one, no matter what happens. Alejandro Stewart HS, good to see you guys. All right, let's get into the news. There's been a lot this last week, and as always, if you are over here, feel free if I missed something that's happened throughout the week, feel free to correct me. Feel free to not correct me, but give me more. Tell me what I missed. Tell me what I haven't found, and I'll find that story so that we can talk about it. But I think I'll be able to get to everything. We'll start old and come back to new. So first thing here, this is like from right at the end of last week, I think. And we may have even covered it in the last one, but it's about Andre Onana and interest from Saudi. Now you get some conflicting reports where some are saying that this club is not interested in him, but you have others saying that they are. There's been a bit of a mess of reports, I would say, in general, on the subject of Andre Onana and as to whether or not what is going to happen in his future. And I think that tells you the truth in itself, which is that it's not settled. That whatever there might be interest from Saudi, there might be interest from elsewhere. If those offers came in, United would consider them and they would move for a keeper. We've spoken about this many times. It's continually kind of floating around. United don't want to spend a bunch of money on the keeper, but if offers come in that they're open to making a change. Now, Nana had done a lot better in the last few games since the big calamities, but there's still time. There's still time. We all know how a keeper can affect a Europa League final, don't we? I still have PTSD over all of that. Um, over last time. So I'm not gonna say anything much more until we see where the season ends. Um, but yeah, it's mostly sell to buy. Still could be him. Still could be by India. Moving on to the next story. This from Laurie Whitwell of The Athletic. Manchester United's director of scouting, Steve Brown, to leave the club amid major cuts to the department. So we knew that more cuts were coming to the scouting department. We knew that more cuts were coming to the overall recruitment teams and all of that kind of stuff. We knew this was happening, but it's interesting here to see from Laurie specifically, Steve Brown being one of the names leaving. He's one of the names we've kind of known when I say known, like he's a named person, he's like, we know who Steve Brown is. I've spoken about him before in terms of what his job and his role is. Significantly reduced under the present leadership. It's pretty much right for them to do that. Again, he's one of the people, and I'm not putting the blame on him, but he's one of the people who was heavily involved in the recruitment for the last few years under Ten Hag. And it was shit. So, in the end of the day, the likelihood was always that everybody who was around for the last few years of recruitment will be replaced, and that includes, of course, Steve Brown as well. He was offered an alternative role in the club, but did not take it up and instead is looking to depart. So again, the type of thing where not necessarily sacked, but said, "Hey, look, we don't want you doing that job anymore. We'll sit here and say, yeah, if you're gonna be if you're willing to take a smaller role, if you're willing to just work with the scouts and yada yada, then what have you. But he's got the experience to say he probably wants to go take a different role at a different club. He was often, as I understand it, the first guy making contact with targets to talk to their agents, to talk to the players, to assess their situations, their willingness to join, things like that. Now that is probably being done by um, Wilcox and co and all of that. Hi, will I join from Mastento? I sure hope so. You tell me. Um, wouldn't our goalkeeper targets change depending on who leaves amongst Bayendir and Onana? Yeah, potentially yes, but I'd not, maybe not in a way. It very much could be about just getting a young player in anyway. If they're good enough to compete with Onana, they're good enough to be our starter for now and to develop. So I guess we will see on that front. So this one comes as no surprise, and surely just another change that was pretty much necessary in order to move the team forward and fully overhaul this recruitment side. Again, the concept was to have a smaller and more focused recruitment team where you've got Vivel with his sort of team and his contacts identifying these young players, guys like Enzo Canabiak, we'll talk about in a minute, and things like that. And then you've got your, Wilcox and the basic team to identify your kind of top targets and things like that as well. So yeah, that's good. So just another change there. If we meet Tottenham in the final, does he adjust midfield to accommodate playing an English team? I kind of doubt it. I think that he played Casemiro and Ugarte against City as well. Remember, recently, and maybe Arsenal too. I can't recall if it was fit for Arsenal, but he did play them. It's just that we've been rotating at the weekends recently because of the rounds. Is the only reason we haven't used the same 11, frankly. Otherwise, we probably would. But no, so I think it'll be virtually the same team in many areas. I think the biggest potential change is the fullbacks, right? Ahmad could come in at right wing back, Shaw could come in at left wing back. Otherwise, the rest of the spine of the team is probably going to remain the same for any meaningful games. Will two meaningful games, the away leg and the final. And I would suggest we'll see a fairly strong team leading up to the final, where we make a lot of subs, but you have to be careful because the final, I think, is on a Wednesday. So it's even one less day of rest in between. Hello, Hamza. Um, James, why do we need to justify that these people are highly rated in the industry? They were just not good enough at United. Yeah, pretty much. It is what it is. They have to be good. Just tell our players we're playing Deportivo de Tottenham. Well, we're going to play in Bilbao again. So, they handle the environment. It's all good. Then we have this from Christopher Michel. It says Liam Delap to Manchester United 50-50. It's still completely open to whether this transfer work out. Now, it's not the most it's not the most informative of updates, of course. But at the same time, it kind of is. It's sort of the discussion we've been having. We genuinely don't know. There's no tendency at the moment. There's been nothing to indicate whether he would pick us or come to us or go anywhere else. We just don't know. And that's, I think, why we're still keeping our discussions open with regards to other strikers, which we will get to in a minute. If it's 50-50, it probably means he's still waiting, which means crap. And yeah, look, like we were discussing yesterday and like Amarim commented on, if it's a situation where he's saying, well, I want to see if you're in Europe or not, then United probably not going to sign him either way, because that's not the way we want to approach things. That's not how we want players, if that's the case. Now, he doesn't say this is the case. We still don't have confirmation it's the case. He may just be waiting to the end of the season for more proposals and things like that. But we know that if it's a matter of waiting to see if we're in Champions League, then it's probably not a player we're going to sign, at this point in time. Did you see Madison injury? Yeah, they have a couple. Bergvall out for the season. Madison's getting scans today, so we'll see. We will definitely see there. Then speaking of Cunha, there was this from Moretto. Where is it? Here we go. He says that another former Atletico Madrid striker, Matthias Cunha, is close to joining Manchester United. The Brazilian has a 62.5 million release clause, and Manchester United intends to pay it in the coming weeks. The verbal agreement between Cunha and the Red Devils has already been finalized. So this is a good source, Matteo Moretti. It's a good source, and he's saying we're essentially done. We've already signed. We're already set. And look, I know that it's been denied and things like that, but as I've said before, I wouldn't be surprised if that is true. But nothing will come out until afterwards. So we'll see if there's any progress reported or anything like that. Camus and Amos wingbacks against Brentford. A serious possibility with Mantato coming off of the bench. So this is definitely seriously possible because both Mesraoui and Dorgu are unlikely to play or to start on Sunday. Then there was this. This is a little more than a week old, I think. But ignoring the title a little bit, everyone wants to join United. This was sort of the comments about Cunha, basically, probably. But the other thing was Batiste seek to extend Anthony's loan spell after United helps him. Now, we got some reports that Betis were wanting to loan again, and that's what we were discussing, that they're unlikely to be able to pay 30 million for Anthony. It's more likely they want a loan. United will want to, if they do a loan, have an obligation that allows them to write the fee off, but they'd much more rather be able to sell for 30 million this summer and completely wipe his fee off. Now, there's been today or last night, there's been some talk in Spain on El Chiringuito TV. Now, look, there's good sources on that channel and there's bad ones, and it's hard to know who and for which club. But there's some talk that Atletico Madrid and some other Spanish clubs are now interested in Anthony as well, and that United are looking for 30 to 40 million. And I do understand that is true. United are looking for that, and that they fielded interest from some other clubs in Spain. Whether or not they actually are going to get offers from things like that, we'll see. But it's only good news if it's even being discussed, right? Because it's going to put pressure on Batiste to have to try to make a say, to buy him, to keep him, to make us a real offer. And if we could sell Anthony for 30 million, that means we can wipe off his amortization. Huge, huge, huge financial gain for United, and opens the door to even more spending, no doubt about that. So there have been inquiries for Anthony from other clubs in Spain. I can tell you that for sure. But not like anything offers wise yet. So it's just good news at the moment. James, I think Ineos need to be ruthless to some with respect to sales. They must try. Yeah, they will. They'll try. Those are going to be tough for Shaw and Mount due to their wages and injuries, but they will try. Yeah, Betis might be forced to make a permanent offer if other teams come in, right? Yep, agreed. So that could be advantageous to us. Now there's this story, which I don't want to spend too much time discussing. It says we've shown an interest in this Blackburn Rovers talent, Egor Tijon. He kind of looks like British Garnacho to me. I don't know if it's just me. Looks like British Garnacho. Man United have submitted a bid between 800,000 to 1.2 million with personal terms unlikely to be an issue if he's open to move. Now, look, it is very much true that we've had interest in him, and that we've inquired him in the past. My understanding is that at this point in time, there's no official bid in, though. That's just my understanding. Now, that may have come up in discussions as United are in talks with them over Dan Gore, excuse me. There's an old NFL player named Frank Gore. He used to be a running back. And got mixed up on my names, but yeah, over Dan Gore. So it's very more likely that it's come up in discussions and maybe a cost has been there, but I don't believe that there is a that there's an offer yet. Whereas he plays another like 10. He's another 10 basically, as I understand it, like an attacking midfielder. But one to keep an eye on because as we know, United are trying to make more of these young signings, more attempts to bring in these young talents from around, in England when they can sign the younger ones, and then similar ones at different ages and things like that as well. Then we move over to this topic. We were talking about strikers. Victor Gyökeres will be a hot topic in the transfer market this summer, but he also wants to play Champions League. Arsenal and Chelsea are very interested. United are also looking closely. Emram has developed him to have a realistic chance. The club probably has to win the Europa League. Now, right after this, Emram commented on this when being asked and was very blunt about his point, which is he hasn't spoken to Gyökeres, but if it's about Champions League, then he's not right for United, right? This is the same point we're discussing. It's very, very clear that we don't want to sign people if they're going to just wait and see. Oops. If we win and get into Champions League. Now, Gyökeres is maybe a little more understandable as an older player, but it's just the principle of the matter that has been stated, and I tend to agree with. I think that again, look, you're not like I say, you're not going to learn anything in 90 minutes, and one could say, well, um, it gives you more money, more moves in the market, things like that, and I agree. But that's still not particularly relevant to individual players. It's not, and like there's been players in the past where they've looked at it and said, "Well, yeah, well, you make promises about signing players, about like what are you going to do then? So what? You have more money. Does that mean you have to be telling Gyökeres, well, we're going to sign this player, and here's all the players we're going to build around and all that? Well, we've done that in the past with Pogba, and it's dangerous. It's a dangerous game to play when you start getting into that. So we will see on this, but I understand why they don't want to do it. Again, I don't think you learn anything about United as a club, as a team, and as a project in 90 minutes. It's a funny discussion though because I'll probably talk about this later when going live, but it's a funny discussion because I was thinking we're facing a reality here as United fans in the near future, which is that we're probably going to end up in a final against Tottenham. If we don't win that final against Tottenham, then there's going to be a massive reaction from fans, right? We all know it. We all feel it, myself included, because it would be just unbelievably embarrassing. I think we all feel as a club to lose to Tottenham in a European final. It would be unbelievably embarrassing, right? Um, how it would reflect on the manager, things like that. However, we should at least also know that that is an emotional response because when you walk into a final in a one-off game against a big team, it has nothing to do with the coach. It has nothing to do with tactics. It really doesn't. I'm sorry to say. Big games are decided by big players, right? 9 times out of 10, it's big games are decided by big players. The players have to show up. The players have to make it happen. The players have to make it work. The players have to be better. When we've played Tottenham this year, I think we lost every time. We've had awful games. We've had awful I wouldn't call it tactical. We had just awful personnel performances and things like that, and we just have to do better. And so, it'd be embarrassing and all that, but my point is you don't learn anything. It's the same discussion as last summer on the FA Cup final, right? The winning the FA Cup final didn't make Ten Hag a good manager, didn't make him the right guy. Losing the Europa final wouldn't make Amorim the wrong guy or a bad manager. But we still hope it doesn't happen. And we're going to find out pretty soon, on things like this. Don't write off Bodo. Yeah, hey, I hope they come back. Playing away to them is tough, especially with some injuries for Tottenham. So we'll see. I wouldn't write them off, but there's a chance. I'm saying there's a growing chance right now that that we will face Tottenham in a final. Jurgen Klopp lost a Europa League final his first season at Liverpool. Jose Mourinho won a Europa League his first season at Manchester United. So, one was more successful in their most recent venture. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Our last game against Spurs, we lost 1-0, but we didn't have Ugarte or Ahmad for that game. And those are big. And Casemiro was not the Casemiro he is today. We didn't have Ugarte or Ahmad. We also didn't have Luke Shaw, who could be there. So we should have a much better and stronger team than we had the last time we lost to Tottenham, and it was a very close game in that respect. So it is what it is. So, but anyway, regardless, it's just sort of a funny thing on this whole topic of Champions League and winning. And I just think emotionally it makes sense, but yeah, neutral ground as well. Emotionally, it makes sense to overreact to one game, but anyone logical wouldn't, and that's why for transfers it doesn't make sense either. Then we've got this Franco Mastento. We've been talking about him a lot the last week. I really, really do think United have a shot at him. Fabrizio says United and Chelsea are interested in Franco Mastento and well informed on his situation. Real Madrid are not pursuing him in the current deal conditions. It's an open race. Now, we got a story that said that he was waiting for Madrid, but that United had been in discussions and had proposed paying the release clause in installments, but they want the money up front. So we know United are serious about this. Madrid are not going to go in for him, so it's really in a similar way to Lenny Yoro. We're going to have to stump up some money, and we're going to have to convince the player. And in that case, it's totally understandable when you're talking about convincing a young player to come to Europe and what the best team for his whole career is. Then we've got a serious we've got a shot. But I really think we're very, very interested. Um, we've been tracking him a long time, and I genuinely think we have a chance. If we have that Champions League money, or significant sales, then I seriously think there's a chance we go and put the money up and force it and say, hey, here's the release clause, here's the money. And the club will say, we want the money, take this move, similar to what we did with Lenny Yoro. And look at how that worked out. Lenny Yoro today, I think, has been one of the best center backs in the Europa League, for sure, and has been one of our best players in recent times, and is really coming to his own. So it was worth it. And sometimes you push those young players to make that choice, especially when they're looking at big clubs. It's understandable, takes some convincing, but we've done pretty well at being able to pull these types of deals. So I'm still fairly optimistic that we could make something happen. Does this transfer depend on an EL final win? No, I don't think so, but I think it helps from the financial perspective because there's other positions we need to buy. Having to stump up the money would be better if we win the Europa League and have the money for it. So that's again still one to just strongly keep in mind moving forward for us here. Then there's this from Lee Ryder, who's a Chronicles chief. Yeah, I think it's a decent source anyway. Says the lab is expecting 120 to 150,000 per week with any suitors. I think that's okay. I think it's at the high end of what's okay. I think 120 is okay, considering what we've been signing players on recently. I don't think it's out of bounds in terms of pay. It's fairly in line. We're not. It's not 200,000, but we certainly shouldn't be doing like 150 plus a ton of incentives. 120 is probably in the right range, for us as L, as well. So that's not a big deal to me. I'm good with that. Then our first signing of essentially the summer has now been completed, and this is Enzo Canabiak. He traveled on Wednesday to Manchester and signed his contract actually on Thursday with his family all present. He is there. He has signed. He will go back obviously until summer, and then it is likely he will join Lausanne on loan. There is a chance he could join the club for the summer tour to see how he's doing, to see how good he is, all of that, or just to get around the United environment before going on loan, but we don't know in that respect. It's not like it's a difficult thing. for him to do that. But, yes, Enzo Cannabich, he did travel on Wednesday, he did his medical, he did sign on Thursday, and he is essentially all set to be United player July 1st, right? Because it's a free contract, a free signing, so we have to wait like, we don't have to wait, it's all set, but he will not be officially a United player until his contract expires and he comes in on, technically July 1st. So then we will find out if there's any chance between now and then of him joining, the tour or playing with the club a little. I mean, you never know. Maybe he comes in, we look at him in person, he trains with us a little bit, and we say, "Shit, we could just why don't you just stay? We need more strikers." You never know what could happen. So I'm keeping my ears open on that. But this is the first of potentially a few more deals like this. Obviously, Diego Leon technically being another that's in the same boat. Um, But yeah, young French striker from L'Havre Academy. I did a video on him the other day. Cameroonian as well as his heritage, his family. Cameroonian international footballer was his father for a long time. And another, Vivell had been looking at a bunch of these young strikers in France. Many of them with African heritage who've come through different areas, and obviously it's in just an area he has a lot of connection with. And so, that's what we see. So good to get somebody in the door, and ready and more for the future. We're still, all of these things that we're seeing, whether they have an impact now or not, these are the things that 2, 3 years down the line, we're going to be going, oh my God, we've got that guy. Oh my God, we've got that guy. Oh my God, that guy's coming through. Holy crap, we've actually got a squad. Um, Players with sell on with the summary, right? And there's more money to be made there. Mason Greenwood, we have a 50% sell on profit. Alvaro Fernandez, there's some stories there. I couldn't find like the best source ones, but there's some stories where Madrid, I think, are interested in Alvaro Fernandez. Um, there's a chance we sell him. He gets sold on, we get 50%. There's even a chance we buy him back and then sell him and make even more money. So it depends there, but that's a possibility. There's quite a few different things that can happen. Is there a loan for Cheeto on the horizon? No, I think he's going to stay with the club. I think he's going to stay with the club. Yeah, they wanted Euro on a free. I know, and it's just a strange strategy Madrid are going for these days. Then there's this latest Jonathan Tah actively being considered by MUFC for the summer. Real Madrid strong contenders with Leverkusen boss Xabi Alonso soon to be appointed. Bayern in the mix. Barca too, but concerns over finance registration. So Jonathan Tah, it's an interesting one. We spoke about him in some videos earlier this week. He's on. We had last summer the much maligned transfer chart, right? There was like 8 center backs on there. We've now been linked to nearly every single one, and Jonathan Tah was on there too. Point being, I do know for quite a fact that United have been watching Jonathan Tah. He fits very well as a central center back into a back three. But we do have Maguire and Delict. Now, the fact that he's free makes it somewhat interesting because if Maguire ends up leaving after a year, then it would be good to have him. You could push Delict out wide for him for the next season, but I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure about this one. How much sense it makes, but he is free, and I would say it's a good one to just keep an eye on because we do potentially need more center backs. I think a left center back is a little bit more of a priority, but if we're looking to center backs, we're likely to not want to spend a lot of money. Um, and Harry Maguire's still better. I mean, look at what the guy's doing on a day-to-day basis. That's our guy. And then in terms of other center back targets, we're probably still looking at those 2 young left-sided ones, the one from Turkey and the one from Argentina. I think those are more in line with what I would expect us to sign if we go for a center back this summer. So, yeah. Morning, James. Bit late, but happy to be here. Let's go. Thanks, buddy. So yeah, this is just an interesting one to watch for now. But yeah, look, because he's free, if it's available for a pretty free deal, then it's a good idea. I mean, Delict, Maguire, they pick up a little bit of injuries here and there. You know, we could replace Lindelof's minutes, Evans' minutes. We probably still need to do that. We know Lissandra won't be back for a while. So I'm not opposed to it. It's actually semi-sensible, but at the same time, I'd also give Maguire a couple years extension. I was saying that the other day in a discussion, maybe it was on the United View or something. I was saying I'd just give him a couple more years. Why not? He's a professional. He's a leader. He's got great experience. He's a great dressing room guy, um, and he's still quality in what he does. He's never been ultra reliant on pace. Um, why not give him a couple more years, on good wages to stay and be with the team for a few more years, and he doesn't have to be the starter at that point, but why not? I don't see why not ever, and in that case, then you don't need Ta. So I think that's we'll see if that comes into consideration as well. Then we have more executive departures from United, which again to be expected. This makes practically the entirety of every executive gone. Senior football directors David Harrison and Richard Hawkins, they've been there for a long time, and you know, um, they've been there a long time. Obviously, United have not been successful during this tenure, and so there's not a lot of connection to players to staff like this for a reason to stay. And instead, we kind of didn't know this was happening. This is not so much about now just like sacking for the sake of sacking, but replacement, right? So instead, we're going to be hiring Michael Sansoni and Dan Nickel to come in. Now, we did see earlier about Sansoni, Mercedes data analyst to come in to head up data and all of that. So F1 Mercedes, I should say, to be clear, he's been participating in sport. But so yeah, we're kind of making new hires, reshuffling packs, all of that kind of stuff. Just more stories on that. Hard to explain the meaningfulness of it. It doesn't particularly matter at this point. Then there's this story. Now, this actually came yesterday. We were on the live. We were talking about this from a French source. There was a French paper that put something out about this, and I said I actually think they're correct. But it's confirmed as well. Lazard, this bank has been tasked to find a buyer for Nice. Now he bought it for 89 million. He's looking to sell it for 250 million. That's a nice little profit for Sir Jim. The biggest factor here, from my understanding, is the transfer ban between the clubs. Obviously, in buying Nice, the view was always to get a further step in towards bigger clubs in football, but the transfer ban issue that UEFA put into place essentially killed off any sort of benefit to owning both Nice and United, and it has essentially pushed Ineos and Sir Jim to pull out fully. Now they already had to completely divest, and change the management, and they set everything up, and the club's running well. So, on that basis, I think they've done a decent job. Nice is actually doing pretty well and probably in a better state, even though they had a chaotic few years. So I think he's actually done quite a good job over there in the end, if he does sell now. But regardless, there's no benefit to owning both. So probably better just to take the cash and maybe utilize that cash towards the stadium, towards, investment and things like that in United. There's really no reason to own both, especially if you look at the fact that right now, um, if you look at the fact that right now, um, we might both end up in Champions League again. And that means that transfer ban will be extended another, 3 transfer windows. So you end up with a situation where it's another 2.5 years before we could even consider doing anything with Nice. Then you say, well, what is even the point of this? After all is said and done, there's really no point. Trying to find it. I'm trying to find this initial piece. Here we go. Because there's more interesting in this piece. If I can find it, but there's really no point in him owning it anymore, and that means, what are we gonna do? Um, and that means that there's just why, like yeah. Anyway, there's no point in owning it anymore. So he'd rather have United. Now, the initial article comes to us here, but I can't get into the full thing now. what it says is that this was the original source, okay? And it says that Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is reporting look into matter. Now, it did say something else that is actually huge news in this initial story, and because they were correct and because they broke the story, it is really worth listening to. And get this, this was what they said in this article, that he wants to divest from Nice and look and utilize the funds towards a full takeover of United. Now, I've been telling you for a long time that he wants to do that. Of course, that's the end goal. It was in this piece, from my understanding, it was in this piece, in this story that was written. It was in there that that they wanted to that it is in there that he wanted to sell it and look towards a full takeover of United. So that is actually really big news in general. That's where he wants to take this. Um, it's actually huge. So we have to keep that in mind, that has now been reported by this big this paper that essentially broke this news in the first place, that they have mentioned something on this, that is the intention. So I certainly think, obviously that is a major story worth watching. As we know, and as we've talked about so many times, the stadium, everything that's moving forward, we're very likely to see a tie-in to ownership with this, a tie-in to how much he owns in United, that all with the stadium, all with this, all with that, and the sale of Nice, I think, is a further step in that direction towards showing that he's going to be all in on Manchester United. So I think that's the last major story that we have of the week. I don't know if I've missed anything. If I have, you can let me know while I'm still here. Um, Otherwise, yeah, we'll keep it calm, keep it to be about it. Um, Obviously, we're likely to do some big rotation. Could give Nice to the Glazers. Oh my God, could you imagine that? Um, Anything on Hackney yet? No, nothing new there. Nothing new there. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we're missing. Otherwise, we'll just kind of keep it there. Um, and leave it and end it, and it'd be a nice quick video on the weekly news. Obviously, I think that what we're still waiting for is to see if there's anything further on Cunha, or if we'll find out anything before the end of the Europa campaign. Um, we're working on things. We're working on midfield. We're working on more signings. We're working on all these sorts of deals. We've signed Enzo Canaviec. We've got all these things in the works. This story on Jim Ratcliffe, I think, is a big one, actually, that will, is a slow moving boat, but towards the eventual end goal of getting the Glazers out of United. I think it's another step in that direction. So very good. All right, I'm going to end it there. This will now be for you guys on Big Up. I'm obviously going to post this on YouTube if you missed some of it. For those on YouTube, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on.